Welcome to Running in the 70s, where we interview, meet, and get to know athletes of all kind who were running in the 70s. I'm your host, Matthew Kleinowski. Today on the podcast, we're back in Western Pennsylvania with a longtime Pennsylvania resident, somebody who's now well into decade number 6 of running. He's logged over 100,000 miles. Let's welcome today on the podcast, Tom Abbott. Hi, Tom.
Hey, how you doing, buddy?
Let's talk about your origin story. How, when, and why did you become a runner?
Very interesting story. I was a freshman in high school at South Hills High School, which is no longer. And I heard it on the morning announcements, anybody interested in cross country, go to this room after school. So I thought it was skiing. So I showed up at the meeting, and sure enough, it was cross country. So I signed up. I said, what the heck? I don't mind. I like jogging and everything. And 53 plus years, it stuck.
How many people were in that first meeting?
We had a pretty large squad. South Hills had about 2,400 students back then. I guess 30 would be a good sized cross country team.
How did you take to competitive running? Did you know anything about racing, and what kind of coaching did you have?
Really didn't know anything about racing. There was the veterans on the team that kind of told us what to do, gave us the workouts, what we had to do. We were a city school, so we really didn't have much coaching at all. And you basically went out there, you got a pair of spikes, a jersey, you got a pair of shorts, and then you lined up and you went in the race. And I found out on the first few races that I had some decent talents. It wasn't great, but I think I was just working, just showing up every day, getting better. And I remember running in my sophomore year. Wasn't quite good enough to make the varsity squad, so I ran the JV race in the city, and son of a gun in 6th, and I still have that little ribbon. The city of Pittsburgh schools has a little motto they put on all their medals and ribbons: "'Tis deeds must win the prize," and I still got that little ribbon. That was that. That so I think that's what got me hooked there by that time.
How successful was the team there by your senior year?
We were very good on our senior year. We went up to the Grove City camp with Coach Longwell and Coach Longnecker. These are some people that are long gone. The whole team went up there. We spent about a week and a half up there. We learned some things, came back, worked harder. And we were the only team that made the state meet from South Hills High School in the history of the school. The school opened in 1918 and it closed in 1989. Never had a team at the state or even in the individual.
Let's find out what year that was. And then how big was the state meet, and how was it to get to a starting line with maybe a lot more people on it?
I actually have the results. I wish I'd have known you were going to talk about that. I can get those results, but I think I have them up here. The state meet, you took the top 2 teams from the city. There were no delineations. There was no single A, double A, triple A. Everybody ran in the race. You were only allowed to run 7. It was up in State College, a double loop on a golf course. It was only 2.5 miles. And we made it by virtue of coming in second in the city meet, which is a story unto itself, because that meet was scored in a way that a meet had never been scored in the history of cross country. Tell you more about the state meet. I'd say there were 400, 350, maybe something like that. All divisions were scored together, and we had a pack of runners. Our top guy was 85th. I was 95th. We had 97th, 99th, 103, 105, 111. That was our clock by virtue of that. So we were 16th in that, and probably 99% of the schools in front of us were the huge WPIL schools that had reputations. And the guy that won that year was Mel Boyd.
Oh, yeah. I'm sure that name's familiar to everybody.
He walked off the cross-country team, walked onto the basketball team, went deep into the playoffs, walked onto the track team, and won the state meet in the 3,200. That's the guy.
Was that 1971? 72?
72, 73.
Okay. Jeff, I wonder if Jeff Foster was in that race.
Oh, if you look at the results, and I'd have to find them for you. I can't put my hands on them right away, but yeah, there's I've often looked at it, and a lot of those top guys in the race, I recognize them. They kept running.
Let's go back to that qualifying race. What was unique about the scoring?
In the city schools, you run dual meets, so it was between us and Peabody. We knew one of us was going to get second, so we ran them in a dual meets, and we lost by a couple points. They had three decent guys. We had one stud, and then let the pack. That's not always good in an invitational. In the city meet, there was at the time, I think 12 or 14 schools, and they're running 10 guys each. We run the city meet, and their guy gets first, our guy gets second, their guys get, I don't know, third, fifth, because they have the studs. But then all of a sudden, here we come with 12th, 15th, 17th, 19th, 23rd. Their fourth man was in the low 30s. Their fifth man was somewhere in the 40s. So you add it all up, it's a tie.
Huh.
Okay, so what happens in a tie? What has happened in every cross-country meet except this one, ever, who has the better sixth man? Well, hell,
Right.
we had the better seventh man. Our seventh man beat their fifth man. But the athletic director of the city of Pittsburgh was an old Peabody man. So they went to him, and the results of the meet came out a tie. The best thing to do to help everybody, we'd have all been happy with co-champs. It's great. We're just co-champs. We're that good. No, he says, we're throwing out the sixth and seventh runners and moving everybody else up.
That is not how the sport works. No.
We lost by 4. So we went to the state meeting, and they went up there too. We had one mission in mind. We were going to pay them back. Results at the end of that was we were 16th and they were 23rd.
Oh, must have felt good.
It was a tough bus ride back for them.
Let's talk about more of you in that time frame. Were you a competitive athlete or sports guy growing up before that?
Yeah, I played the Little League ball. Was not a football player, but I played basketball in a church league, and I played that for 5 years. Cross country, obviously, you're running track. In the summertime, I would swim for the neighborhood swim team. Actually, I was a diver. I didn't swim. And I liked to golf, although we didn't have golf teams.
So how was running then as you started to get success and enjoy it? Did that become part of your key identity? Where was running in your athletic identity?
It was pretty much my identity. We used to train all summer, and we would, on Friday nights, we'd go bowling. The whole team would show up and go bowling. Or there was a place out in South Hills called the Q and Cushion. We'd go and shoot pool rather than go out and do bad things. But yeah, I pretty much identified with it, enjoyed it. We often sought out other races after the season was over during cross country, the old JFK, John Harwick route used to put on, and the Judge Brodsky run, and the Golden Triangle half marathon. I think the AU was in charge back then. And they'd run some track meets at Pitt. We'd show up and just run those in the off season.
I know that you've logged your miles. You're over 100,000 miles. What spurred you to do that? Were your teammates doing that too?
Some of them were, yes. I'm actually 115,000. When we went to that camp, Coach Longwell or Coach Longnecker, whoever, somebody said, write your mileage down because you'll be able to go back and look and see what you did. And next year, you'll be able to see what you can improve on. So I said, yeah, sure, I'm going to start doing that. And I got boxes and boxes of old journals. At one point, I was putting down what I ate, what time I went to bed, what the weather was like, etc. Now it's just restricted to mileage, the course, and maybe a few comment words.
Let's talk about the bigger running world there. You were aware of Mel Boyd and the Pittsburgh running scene and making those local races. What about the bigger scene of running? That was just before started to explode in the US. Were you paying attention to running then in the bigger picture?
Yeah, absolutely. Watching Frank Shorter in 1972, there was always the mile. Who's going to run the next fastest mile? That was always on the mind. And of course, collegiately, you'd see a lot of people that you knew a little older than you that were running collegiately. So on Mel Boyd, West Virginia, Alex Kasich, I think he was down there.
Yeah.
And a lot of collegiate stuff that you're watching too. But nationally, nothing was really on that radar yet.
What about your training? How far were you running in high school?
Not really that far. I ran my first marathon at age 16. The same group of guys ran the Pittsburgh Marathon, which they called it the Pittsburgh Marathon. It was at South Park, a triple loop, big hill up there. Our long run, I think we ran an 8-miler once. We were proud of ourselves. And we warmed up the night before playing street football, get our legs moving. And I remember we lined up over there at South Park, started at the fairgrounds, finished it on the race course. There were over 100 runners in the race, and lots and lots of mythical things. We had this glucose solution that had to be real strong. You had to drink that and don't eat steak the night before. So we lined up. Me and my one buddy went slow, and a couple of other guys went a little bit faster. To make the long story short, all of us finished 12th, 13th, 14th, 15th, and 16th, right around 3 hours and 50 minutes. And that year there were only 20 finishers.
Wow. Why was the attrition rate so high?
Nobody trained for it. Nobody knew what it was. And it was so easy because it was 3 8-mile loops and a little bit more. So you could drop out after 1 or 2. If you started that third one, I guess you were going to finish.
What were you doing for your own running training shoes?
Oh, yeah. Chuck Taylor low cuts, man. That was it. Chuck Taylor low cuts. And they came in 2 colors, white and black. That's all we had. I don't believe the running shoes of any sort hit around here until 73, 74. That was Adidas and Nike were the only.
Now you've become a runner. In your mind, you are a runner along with all those other athletic things. What kind of student were you? And what was your thinking for after high school? You're going to college. Were you going to be an athlete?
For me, I was in the Pittsburgh Scholars Program. It was not whether I was going to college. Right after high school, I was heading to college to be an actor. I was going to Point Park. I went down there, and that did not go so well. It wasn't my thing. So I got a call from my buddies who had just graduated, and they said, "Hey, you're still running. Let's run the Golden Triangle 13-miler, Pittsburgh 13-miler in late October. North Park to Point Park, right down the middle of McKnight Road, no traffic control. You just ran and dodged the cars." So I ran that and was way behind those. And I said, what the hell? I'm going to keep running. I got out of it. I wasn't going to be an actor. I went into liberal arts, eventually into teaching.
And where did you go? Did you leave Point Park?
Yes, I left there for CCAC.
And how was that, the running community there, in your experience?
Yeah, I was a small fish in a very big pond. Neil Cohen, Sammy Bear were running things over there. I tried out for the team, tried to run with the team. Obviously, coming from a city school with all the guys that they had over there that came from everywhere, all over the country, I couldn't even crack the JV team. They allowed me to run with the team, and in the occasional meet, they would have an open division, so they'd take guys like me to that. But that was tough. And a lot of those guys I looked up to, and a lot of those guys were extremely talented in watching them run and compete.
What are your memories of Neil Cohen?
He recruited a lot of guys and skirted a lot of corners, did a lot of things like that. It was different. He was a different guy.
And what about some of the characters? Who were some of those elite runners? Did you get any relationships with any of them?
Yeah, they were friends, but they all lived in a house. They lived off of Perrysville Avenue. Robin Holland, Malcolm East, Mike Clark, there was a kid named Johnson, O'Vannon. There was a whole bunch of guys there. Timmy, there was three guys came in from Georgia.
You enjoyed racing. What was your approach to racing?
Depends on the race. I learned fairly early that the longer the race, the better I was. Okay, probably my worst race is the mile. At one point, I actually trained about 4 or 5 months for the 800, running through those 200s, 100 speed drills and everything. And it's just too fast, too hard. I did okay. I got a PR, but pretty much the longer, the better. And as I was at CAC, I wasn't obviously running meets, and there wasn't too much on the road to run either or anywhere else. So I did a lot of training. That's when I upped my mileage from what I was running in high school, maybe 30 miles a week, to 70, 80, and finally up into 75 in the 100-mile a week range. And to compete off of that really made a big difference. My times for racing times were measured in a 5-mile race because that was it. So I come out of high school about high 29s. And after a year or two of putting that high running in, suddenly I was in the low to mid 26s and knocking on the door. So I said, okay, I'm doing okay. I would approach racing in that fashion.
Allegheny is a 2-year college. Where did you go after that?
Carnegie Mellon University. I transferred over there with Gary Meckley and had the smarts, had the grades, etc. So I transferred over there and got into their teaching program. I ran cross country, didn't like track, so I didn't run track. It was a different animal over there. I had a very good team. We ran the President's Athletic Conference. I think we won the conference. We did go to nationals and qualify for nationals. I believe we were in the top 10 Division III at nationals. That was in Cleveland, Case Western.
What was your best success?
In that one, there was a course in Shenley that was pretty damn ass hard. I remember running PRs on that course, but I was the number 2 man on the team, a fellow by the name of George Moore. He's a local guy, maybe Jeanette he went to. Could never catch up to him. Would try to run different strategies. He was obviously a very talented runner, very good runner. He'd always be a good 20 seconds ahead of me. He'd make his move at different spots on the race. I'd go out with him, try to stay with him. And we'd get up over a hill and he'd take off and I couldn't answer, whatever it was. So I was happy being second guy.
What were you thinking after college? How much was racing in your vision of what you were going to be? You're going to be a teacher now, not an actor. What about racing? And was that your lifestyle? How did you view racing once your college career ended?
I actually began road racing in college because I didn't run much track and got hooked up with Tom Allison and the Human Energy Running Club. We had quite a stable of guys, and I would run in the spring races like the Cherry Blossom Classic, which was on the radar. Tom Allison talked me and said, you got to try a marathon. You're running 100 miles a week now. You got to try a marathon. And obviously I had to qualify for Boston. So I ran the Maryland Marathon in December and ran it a qualifying time. You had to run to under 250. So I ran 2:47:36 in December. And that was with a terrible hill called Sater Hill. It's not over there, but qualified for Boston. So the following spring, I wasn't running track. So I ran the Boston Marathon. And that kind of solidified the fact that I was much better at the longer races.
What year was that? What was Boston like?
That was 75 was I qualified in Maryland. I actually ran Boston in 76. I have a picture of myself standing in Hopkinton by the bank thermometer. And the thermometer says 98 degrees.
Wow.
And that was the year of the Inferno. Jack Fultz won it that year in 2:20. A person was going down every 6 seconds and in the race, something like that. So it was very hot, and except there was the double whammy as you got in toward the inlet, because it's Hopkinton is point to point. You got to the inlet and there was a backdoor cold front. So as you hit with 4 or 5 miles to go, you were hit with 60-degree temperatures. So if you can imagine, completely dehydrated, you're done, your body's struggling to go, and now all of a sudden you go from heat exhaustion to cold exhaustion. I ran
Brilliant.
3 minutes of my best that day. I ran that day, and I was pretty happy with that. I paced myself pretty well.
What was the logistics like there? The starting line, did they put the elite runners at the front then? Water timing?
The elite runners got their little spot up there, and that was by time, which I don't know what it was. And then everybody else, you just had to be the first guys behind them or whatever you wanted. There was no chip timing. You didn't have the watches and so on. The draw of Boston was, you don't worry about the aid stations. Anything you want, you just reach out into the crowd and ask for it, and they'll give it to you. And the crowds are obviously from Hopkinton on down to little towns, Wellesley. You get in that Wellesley Hills, you cannot hear yourself think. People would be screaming at the top of their lungs, and it didn't matter where you are. They're just yelling at you. There was no aid station, and when you finished, you had to make sure you looked at that clock because there wasn't any electronic stuff. They would still had to tear off things on your numbers. That's what I remember.
After Boston, how soon did it take you to find a teaching position?
I got out of Carnegie Mellon in 78. I got an immediate job in Peters Township, but it was teaching middle school. And I was very lucky because there was a glut of teachers. But I wanted to get out of middle school. I just couldn't handle that particular age division. So I got a job in Wilkinsburg for 2 years, which was teaching 10th grade over there. And then I was laid off from there and no teaching job to be had. Looked at a radius of 60 miles, and you had to do the old handwritten applications and things. They didn't have all that stuff. And I think I got 3 or 4 interviews and no job offers at all. So I ended up doing other things. I worked for a gas station. That's back when they pumped your gas and made ends meet. And then I got hooked on with Converse Incorporated. I did some specialty work for them. They got into the running field with Arthur Lydiard. And Lydiard had some things, and the Converse had some things. And I traveled with the salesman and talked to the stores and took a look at the shoes and tried to sell them and things like that. And so I was able to do that for a while, but then that wasn't looking so good. So I went back and got a master's degree in technical writing, which is to explain what that is. That's the interface between the buddy in a company, the guy that's working on the line, the executive guy, the business guy, the planner, the CEO. There's one guy that has to be able to coordinate all of those things and put it in some kind of, and that's what a technical writer does. But then I said, let's try one more time. And I put some applications out there. And sure enough, I got a job in Blairsville with Danny Kunkelman up there in Blairsville High School. So he and I were co-teachers there for about 4 or 5 years.
Were you involved in track or cross country throughout that?
Not at Peters Township, but Wilkinsburg, I was the girls' head track coach. I had all the girls, tremendous sprinters. I had one gal who was the runner-up in the girls' triple jump. I believe it would be 1980. Jennifer Rushton. We took her up the state meet, and she just missed that much being state champ. And wow. I had some WPI qualifiers. That was little Reese Patrick was the coach over there.
Let's talk about the state of women's athletics by the end of the 70s then. Were they getting funding? Did they travel? Was it comparable to the boys program?
At Wilkinsburg it was. I could only speak to that. We had a lot of girls who were interested. There weren't a whole lot of sports for girls back then. They had the softball team, but there were cuts. That's the beauty of the track team is nobody's cut. Come on over. Hey, we're running the dual meet. Hey, well, if there's 15 of you, we're going to run 5 heats or whatever. So that was always a positive thing. But yeah, they were pretty much equal there. We were pretty strong in terms of numbers on the girls, which was funny because I would coach the girls in whatever and dismiss them. And then they'd see me taking off running because I'd have to get my workout in. And here it is late after 5 o'clock or something. So they would say, hey, coach, I think I can beat you. I said, I know you can beat me. They said, no, but I can beat you in 100 meters. I said, well, I'm not even going to line up and try that. So they said, no, you have to try it because we want to see. Okay, curiosity would line them up. They heard on in their blocks. Boom, boom. I was toast, you know. They were running They all had to run against me. All my 100-meter runners had to run against me. And they took off, and they ran about around 12 seconds. 2 seconds later, I'm coming. I told you I could beat you. I said, yeah, but what do you say we go a mile? Oh, no, I'm not a distance runner.
Well, did you contribute to the success of that triple jumper? Were you coaching her?
Yes, I was a jumps coach. I've coached a number of jumpers. I coached a couple state meet qualifiers in recent years. And there was always a clinic out at Baldwin, Richie Wright. And I always made it a point to go there to learn and to try to. And if I'm going to be a coach, I can't just be a straight distance coach. These are all kids. And I said, oh, I could learn something about the jump. So I know a lot about the long and triple. I learned some about the high. Hurdles, I don't know a whole lot about. I did some shot put stuff. I just try to be a well-rounded coach. Even if I don't know what I'm doing, it looks like I know what I'm doing.
Let's talk about Lydiard method. How did you discover that, and what part of that was it in your training?
Yeah, that was Ron Dawes' book. And Ron Dawes in 1968, he was the third Olympian marathoner. And he was a guy of average ability or above average ability who simply trained harder than everyone else. He was able to run in extreme conditions and elevation in the marathon. I think he only ran about a 2:31 marathon to make it in 1968, something like that. He was able to use the Lydiard method with slight modifications to work for him. I thought, what the hell? This looks like it makes sense. It's periodization before periodization was popular. Lots of over distance, transitional hill repeats, tempo runs, then intervals, then racing, and then you're done. It brings the athlete to a peak. So I tried it, and it worked. It worked. The modifications of the Lydiard program were mostly on the hills and occasional frequency differences, but definitely the peaking type differences in the program. I bought the program. And the funny thing about it is I had met Lydiard. He came to Pittsburgh to do a seminar. So I had met him. And then when I was working with Converse, he designed 3 shoes. So I got to travel with him a few times, and we talked about his programs. And it was a unique situation because here's this elite guy that coached all these. I knew his credentials. What does he know about me? Nothing but the other side of the newspaper. But I got a chance to talk to him about his methodology and what to do here and what to do there and how does this work and how did it work for this guy. And he always would say it's individualized. I coached each individual. It was not a team concept and everything else. And he was a fascinating guy because we would stay at New York, the dog and pony show for the New York Marathon. We'd have a booth and he'd be there signing autographs and all that. We'd try to sell shoes. And he'd say, hey, Tom, in these American hotels, he says, they're missing something. I said, what's that? He said, they should have beer in the rooms. Yeah, he would always get himself a 6-pack of beer. He said, now you put this by your bedside. I said, that's pretty hardcore, Arthur. What is that? He says, if you knew what was in that water, you wouldn't drink it either. Drink the beer.
That's great.
And,
well, how long was your relationship with him? How long was that connection where you were with Lydiard?
they were on staff for a couple of years. Converse fell all over itself in terms of distribution and factory to door. The shoes caught on fairly well, but not enough. And at the time, there were so many companies just competing for your business, and it was exploding, as you said. And Converse went belly up. Nike ended up buying them out, and they laid a lot of people, myself included.
Do you know what happened with Arthur Lydiard after that?
Never really followed him after that. I couldn't tell. That would be late 80s. He may have passed soon after that.
Certainly had a big impact on a lot of people. It sounds like a dramatic impact on you personally.
It was neat to be able to have that kind of relationship with somebody like that.
What was it like to be in those boots at the Newark Marathon?
I was just simply a company rep. They had 200-300 company reps there.
Okay.
The runners would come through. That's when running became commercialized. Basically late 70s, early 80s, they started the expos. It used to be you'd show up, you'd get a number, and you'd run the race and finish. It's like the first great race. You finished, you got a popsicle stick with a number on it. You went over to a table, gave them a popsicle stick, and they gave you a T-shirt.
Let's talk about that. You were at the very first Great Race?
Yeah, yeah. I sent a photo to a gal from P3R who's doing a blog on. There's 19 perfects, if you've ever heard of that. We've run all 45 of them without missing one. And there's only 6 of us that have run 46 of them because the one year they didn't have it because of a strike, but we had one in Shenley Park anyway. But she's doing a blog on perfects, and she wanted me to send out pictures. I have a picture of the starting line in the first Great Race. And there's a lot of folks in there that were from Human Energy and so on. Carl Hatfield was in the front row. And in the front row with his J.C. Penney 5 and 10 sweats is Mayor Caligiuri. And he's standing there like he's getting ready to start. And it's the start of the very first Great Race. Of course, when the gun went off, Caligiuri went about 100 yards and jumped into a car and rode to the finish.
That's great. What was the thinking? Do you remember anything about it when it was the first race, that it would be something that would last forever and become a big event for the city?
Never thought it would last forever. I wanted to run it because it was one of the very few races that was able to be run on the city streets. Most races had to be run in the parks or neighborhoods, of course, where they could be safe. It never seemed to be something that was going to maybe last. We weren't sure, but races had come and go. But the very first one was not anything special. I said there were maybe 300 runners, and the course was long and so on and so forth. Never thought it was going to last as long as it did.
From that first day, do you think you knew any of the 19 perfects at that point? How long did it take for those runners to separate and you guys get to know each other?
We had our heads above the water in about 10 years. There were some crazy guys that were in the perfects that are no longer. But they were statisticians or mathematicians or accountants or something. And they had perused everything and come up with a list of, I don't know, maybe 40 or so that have run them all. And they tried a little survey thing like that. I remember at 10 years, which I guess be 87 then, a friend of mine, Ken Balke, who was on the Human Energy team, myself, and we were just shaking our heads and say, man, we've run 10 of these already. And I said to him, I'll see you at 20, Ken. He says, I'm going to try to get to 25. I said, okay, I'll go. We never had any idea all of a sudden, not all of a sudden, but it was going to be at the 40s and 45s and so on.
Let's talk about that for a little bit in terms of your idea that you were going to take rest days. It's something to not be injured and to be capable of doing the race over 45 years. Have you had injuries, and what has changed as you've gotten older with your rest day approach?
Some of the guys you've talked to, I've had every injury that you can imagine 3 times. I've treated them with respect. When you get hurt, you can't run, or you modify your running, or you swim, or you do something else. Rest days are essential in the periodization with the Lydiard runs. Obviously, once you're racing, you're not training anymore. You're pretty much just jogging, keeping yourself going and resting and racing. But I always took a mandatory 2 weeks. Of course, they weren't exactly rest days, but just very little running. You go out the door. If you make it out, you don't. Make it out, you don't go. And you have to respect it. You have to respect it. I've had some pretty good injuries. The worst injuries, I guess, for me were when I hit my 40s, the calf pull. Everybody who hits it, my calves are getting tight, and all of a sudden I pulled it. It's hard, a muscle and a hamstring pull. And with both of those, you can still jog a little bit. But as I got older and so on, I had to respect more and more, try to run as many days as possible and listen to my body. I was always very fortunate to listen to my body. I have 54 years of running. I'm in my 54th year. And with that many miles, I've been pretty lucky because I got a lot of friends with bad knees, bad hips, can't do this, can't do that. I'm still out there doing it. And I began to respect it. And nowadays, I'm still trying to figure it out with the resting because I'm listening to my body, but yet I want to train. And with so many miles on the legs and I can't run at the level I could run, And even comparatively, because I was above average at best in the age division, I could beat people or at least hold that by out training them. I can't out train them anymore. You know?
What was your maximum? Have you looked back at your logbooks? What was your biggest month?
478 miles.
Okay.
And that was a March of early 80s, somewhere in there. That included some of the hill repeats where I would run hills 3 days a week, and the linear training uphill, the Dawes training, uphill hard, jog a little bit, downhill hard, jog a little bit, and then striders of anywhere from 100 to 200. And we're not talking about a 50-yard hill. We're talking about a half-a-mile hill.
Were you doing this by yourself? Did you have training partners?
I would do it by myself, yeah, mentally. And then, of course, Sunday was always Sundays 20. So I managed to stink in 478 miles. My highest week was 119, I think, something just short of 120.
What about nutrition? At some point, did you abandon just the Lydiard six-pack and pay attention to nutrition and training?
Yeah, obviously, if you're running that kind of mileage, I was always able to eat anything I wanted and tried to eat well. I never was a fast food fan. Pizza's my downfall. But I do try to get the vegetables in. I'm a big banana apple guy. Peanut butter on an apple, that's good stuff. And grilled cheese. A lot of it depended upon where I was at. If I was struggling working in a gas station, hot cheese sandwich and ramen noodles is going to do it.
You've had the runner's life. So how did this affect, inform, or contribute to the other side of your life, your personal life and your relationships?
It's true that I am leaning prejudicial toward a lot of my friends are athletes of some sort. Obviously, as you detected, it's a part of my life. I cannot imagine not running. God willing, if everything goes well, I'm going to be around for a while. And maybe if I'm the only guy that's 103 years old running a great race, I'll set a world record or something. But everybody thinks about how they're going to die, how they're going to pass away. And they said, I've talked to buddies and which asked me, how would you like to go? Well, obviously, I don't want to go. But I said, if I'm going to go, I'll probably be running down the road and the 13H Flyer Express bus is going to hit me. And they'll say, he died doing what he wanted. He died doing what he loved.
And what about your family relationships? Are there people close to you that are runners?
Yeah, my wife is a runner. She's a very talented age division runner. She's 71 years old. We recently both competed in the National Senior Games in Pittsburgh. We have been competing in the National Senior Games for about 12 or 14 years. She is a 1,500 meter specialist, but she ran the 800 this time. She came in sixth in her age division. The last games in Fort Lauderdale in the 1,500, she was third in the nation. She has been the Great Race 5K age division champion numerous times. She only runs the 5K. She doesn't want to run the 10K. And she's very talented. She runs in the 95th plus percentile of her age division. And she's been like that. And when I married her back when she was in the 50s, she actually came in, I believe, third in the 5K overall at age like 54 or something like that. So obviously I've got my partner that's, we discuss things. She just called me coach.
Let's talk about the senior games. I competed before COVID in the Masters Athletics, the Canadian, the provincial, Ontario, and Masters Athletics, some international events. And I found I could get on the podium if I ran the steeplechase, because once you hit 60, there were less people willing to go over the barriers. But how did you discover the senior games, and what kind of community is that? Are you seeing the same people over the last 12 years? Is there attrition there? How's it going?
The first game we competed, I believe, was 2009. And it was just me perusing the internet or whatever, found it. A senior game, that sounds like a pretty cool thing. So you had to qualify in your state. You have to qualify to be in the top 4 in your state. Then you qualify for the national games, and you can go to the national games. We went in 2009 and qualified for the 5K road, and strangely in Pennsylvania. the 5K road was run on the track. And in Pennsylvania has since, they don't put on a road race qualifier. So I have to qualify through Delaware or West Virginia or some other state. So then you go to the nationals and you can run there. And we ran out in, I believe, San Jose, California, but I was in the 50 to 54. I came in 12th in the 5K. And I said, well, this is pretty cool. 12th in my age division. And it was pretty cool. We stuck around. We watched a lot of the races and so on. And so there are some beasts. There are some beasts that run these things. So we've tried to qualify in the off season. They run them every 2 years and you qualify every other year. And we've done that. And my wife is qualified in the 1500 and the 5K. My one buddy, Dave Bowser, who was a medalist in the 5K road about 4 years ago. And it becomes a natural thing to do. It's a fun thing to do. But the competition is fierce. The competition is fierce. I was looking at the World Masters, I guess, were recently. And they had this gal who was 70 years old who had run 6:17 for the 1500. And they said, wow, this is an amazing time. And the guy who wrote the article, I immediately emailed him. There's a gal who ran the Senior Olympics who ran 6:21, 4 seconds back. She didn't go to the National Masters. So this tells you the qualification, how well it's done, how good that is, as good the games are. And it's really cool. Pittsburgh. It was really neat to be around in Pittsburgh.
It's interesting to me, the drive to stay healthy, to run, to be part of it, but also to compete. You've been doing the right thing so that you've been able to race now across 50 years. That's remarkable.
Yeah, just lucky. Just lucky. That's the thing. You've got to think things through. A lot of runners are just blind. A lot of runners don't succeed after college because there's no coach telling them what to do. And a lot of runners, they throw something at the wall. If it sticks, it sticks. If it doesn't, so they try to compete as they do. And, you know, what's really used to fry, what do they call me, grind my gears, is people say to you, oh, you run them 5-mile marathons. I said, no, 26 miles marathons. Or somebody comes up and says, yeah, I run them 5Ks and I'm going to run a marathon because I finished the 5K. I say, okay, yeah, good luck with that. It's like Frank Shorter said, you're not going to run 26 miles on good luck. But,
yeah, let's talk about the writing. Have you done any writing? Apart from that one article you mentioned, have you done other writing about running?
I wrote some articles. I wrote one for the local. I don't know if you know a fellow named Rex Rakowski. He was a stringer for the local Valley News Dispatch, which is a local newspaper, and he would cover running, and he'd cover a lot of sports. And he'd say, "What are your best runners out there? Give me a list of your best hills around here." So I wrote him a multi-page article, and he called me up the next day, and he said, "You mind if I put that in there? You get the byline." I said, "No, put it in there." And I rated each hill and did this and that and the other thing. So I've done those kinds of things, but nothing professionally.
Is that article still available? Maybe we can attach it to your podcast episode so anybody running over there can see if those hills are still what they were and see what they think of your opinion of them.
I'm going to have to do some digging, but I'll see what I can find. I'll see if I can find that and the state results from 72 and that picture with Mayor Caligiuri in it. I think
that sign over your shoulder is the 100,000-mile
okay,
banner.
yeah.
Are you going to update that? Is there any other milestone that gets a change to that?
That was when I hit 100,000 miles, which was a significant amount of time because I haven't been doing a lot since then. But that sign was made by my youngest daughter, Kelsey. It might have been 2004, 2005 when I hit that mark. And I timed it so that the 100,000th mile was the first mile on the Shenley Park cross-country course that we used to run, which is now the Steve Falloon Memorial Trail, who was a friend of mine who passed. And the 100,001st mile would be coming back that mile. And my daughter at the time was 10. She made the sign, came out, put it up there, and we have some pictures of it. And she ran that 100,000th mile and that 100,001.
That's a nice story. Let me ask you about this podcast. I'm trying to cover the idea of talking about running in the 70s, before and after people have passed through the decade. What's of interest to you? I've certainly got some elite runners. I've got some coaches. I've got some people who are in the industry. What contribution do you think people could make? What would you like to hear about from people on this podcast?
There's a couple different ways I would look into, and it might be hard on your part to find it, but people who directed those races, who put on races, what was that like? Obviously, there wasn't much to it. And that might be interesting. The history of the shoes, the pair that you have in your backdrop there. We all had a pair or two of those. I think maybe I may be a little bit higher on the elite end. I was a pretty good runner. Find a couple guys who are still around, and I can give you the 19 guys that were still around. And there's quite a few guys who were never elite guys, but they're still out there doing it. See what they have to say.
I didn't do it to profile. Elite runners are often have a long history. I haven't gotten connected with Malcolm East yet, but of course, some of these elite runners have had stories, books, movies made about them. And
Right.
So what we talk about doesn't need to rehash that, but certainly people have lots of stories and personal experiences. So that is what I'm going for. That was really something I want to say. What happened to these people, and how you're a bit unique in that you're still running? And there are people I talked to that said, I just ran 8 miles today. But there's a lot of people who aren't able to run anymore, have had different health turns. And how does that affect their psyche? I'm not an athlete. I'm not able to do this thing that's been a big part of my life. That's always fascinating to me. And it's not intended to be dark. It's the same passages we're all going to go through at some point, unless you get hit by a bus on your best run of the year. Yeah. We all go through those passages. So let's talk about that. As we get older, we're not able to run as fast, although there are age groups and things like the senior games. How are the passages of time and athletics? How do you look at those? Because the clock doesn't lie. You're timing your runs, you're logging your miles. So there's a numbers game here. How do you look at those numbers and adjust to they're not what they used to be?
Yeah, that's the tough part. That's the very tough part. Slowdowns, and I have a theory about slowdowns. I could expound upon that if you have another couple hours. But it's not arithmetic, it's geometric, it's exponential in a slowdown. And it does occur in the late 30s. And I have some other theories that some people don't go through slowdowns as fast as other people. There are reasons why certain people suddenly get soup, like over a span of 2 years, you're losing a minute a mile. Whereas the previous 5 years, you got maybe 15 seconds per mile slower. And why does that happen? And that's the hard part, is dealing with that. When you get out there and you say, okay, I can make excuses. I'm old, or I'm 20 pounds heavier. What do you make your excuse up? It's still an excuse. The way I look at it, and I deal with the longevity of the matter, is that, okay, in the Great Race, I used to run about 30 to 31 minutes. Okay, so I'm on an all-fired goal. I got to break an hour. And I almost got it last year with an hour and 28 seconds. And what cost me was where I was. Obviously, there's a crowd running the tangents, and missed by 20. Wasn't dissatisfied. I got it done. So this year, all right, 59 or bust. To me, that's what motivates, and that's the goal. And in the 5 kilometers, I'm actually going to run a race in about a little less than 2 weeks. It's at North Park by the swimming pool. My wife and I ran a race back in May on this same course. And man, we stumped the place out. It was one of the slowest 5Ks I've had in many years. She went out too fast and ended up having to walk. So there's another race on that course in less than 2 weeks. You bet I'm signed up for it.
Yeah, it sounds like you're going to get a PR on that course.
And I'm going to teach that course a lesson. It may not be a PR, but it's going to be like, huh? So that's what I would say is, for me, it's realizing the adaptation. And nowadays, to us back in the day, if you got an age group award, you didn't run fast enough. You had a bad race. You didn't get an overall. Nowadays, I can't even get an age group award. Sometimes I'm fifth in the age group of 9 guys or something like that. But that's how you overcome things. And if you're not having fun, don't do it.
That's a great way to look at it, and having fun for 52 and a half, 53 years of running. Good for you, Tom. I certainly would like to talk to some of the guys on your list, the people who are under the radar, who have been running all this time too.
I'll send you a list of their names. I can't give you any contact information.
I'm good at finding people. I'm a tech and a data guy, so I've tracked down some people that other people said were impossible to find. Did you know Steve Molnar? Does that name ring a bell?
Yeah, Molnar. Yeah, Molnar was an Olympic qualifier. He was on the human energy team. Yeah, I remember one race we ran it was near Blairsville. It was what's the name of the mental institution that used to be on 22?
Oh, I don't remember.
It was on the ground, and it was to benefit those. So I showed up, Molnar shows up. And I'm thinking, it's a 10K. Yeah, I'm running for second today. But then I go out and he goes out with me. And we're just talking. We're running along. And I'm thinking, the longer this guy stayed with me, the better chance I have to beat him. It's a double loop course. We get on the second loop. We get up to 4 miles or whatever. And I forge out about a 20-yard lead. So he sits back 20, 30 yards back. Here we go. 5 miles, 5.5 miles. Okay. Less than a half a mile to go. I start sprinting I held him off. I ran a course record, broke his previous course record. He also broke the course record. All right, so I get up off my knees. I'm puking. I'm done. And he comes walking over and he goes, Tom, I underestimated your kick. And I'm like, But those were the kind of races that, when I say that's how I would outthink somebody, I'd pull one of those every once in a while because I thought I was for second. And he wasn't even winded. And he said, these 10Ks are too short. I used to run 30 miles, 50 miles.
Yeah. I grew up in Johnstown. I was younger than Steve. I ran with one of his brothers on my team, and I ran against another younger brother as a rival during the mid-70s. We did a run to Ligonier from Johnstown. There's a traffic light in Westmont. Third Sunday of August or first Sunday of August would meet there. The light would turn green, would run 18 miles to Ligonier, and Steve would run back.
Yeah, that was him. Yeah, that was him.
I'm from Johnstown. What's your experience was with the Johnstown Marathon?
I'd run a time or two before, but this was the flood. It was, and I have a picture of myself in several underpasses coming out of 3 feet deep water. Literally.
The course was flooded in 77.
Yeah, the course was completely flooded because the hurricane came in, but they ran it anyway. So they ran it anyway. In several spots, you're going knee deep or deeper and going through an underpass or something like that. And it was a typical 1977 race. No police protection, no escorts, just a route. And maybe if you're lucky, there's an arrow down there on the road or a sign on the pole that you go, you're supposed to make a left turn here, you're supposed to make a right turn there. I remember running 23 miles with a guy by the name of Ken Cornbow. And I thought, who the hell is this guy? I could win this damn race because nobody showed up because it was a terrible day. I did. I don't care. Rain doesn't bother me. And all of a sudden at 23 miles, he takes off. And he's gone. He's gone. He beat me by an even 3 minutes. A minute a mile faster. We were running about 6 minutes a mile, and he ran the last 3 in 5 minutes a mile.
Wow. You got second in the Johnstown Marathon, 1977.
Yeah. One of my bigger trophies. That's one of these over here.
All right. Good stuff, Tom. It's great to get to know you.
Yeah, I'll be looking forward to checking this out in your podcast and everything. Sounds good.
All right. Thanks for your time, Tom.
Thank you, sir.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
I hope you enjoyed another episode of Running in the 70s. Voices, stories, and memories of athletes who were running in the 70s. Until next time, wherever you are, keep looking forward and don't forget to look back.